Good afternoon to all our members joining us today in the Taxation and Legislation Committee of AmCham. Today we're going to talk about a very, very important topic for our country, and we are very glad to have the experts with us today. We have an international guest today with us, Dr. Kyle Squires. He's connected directly from Arizona State University with us, and Dr. Victor Sanchez Urrutia, who is the Panamanian counterpart in this very, very special topic and very important and recent for all our companies. I would like to thank our sponsors for having us today here and making this possible. And well, first of all, before talking about future of Panama regarding the semiconductor industry and the USA CHIPS Act, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. As I said, we have Dr. Kyle Squires. He's the Dean of the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, Senior Vice Provost for Engineering, Computing, and Technology, founding CEO of Southwest Advanced Prototyping Hub, Foundation Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. Appointed in February 2016, Dr. Squires previously has served as Vice and Interim Dean, as well as Director of the School of Engineering of Matter, Transport, and Energy, one of the 8 Fulton Schools of Engineering. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Washington State University, and a Master's of Science and PhD degrees in Mechanical Engineering from Stanford University. As a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering, he has made significant contribution through his research that focuses on computational fluid dynamics, turbulence modeling of both single and multi-phase flows, and high-performance computing. On the other hand, we have Dr. Sanchez Urrutia. Dr. Sanchez has a PhD in electrical engineering. He has been professor and researcher at Technological University of Panama, where he was also dean. At UTP, he founded and directed the School of Aviation and Logistics, a project between university and COPA to support the development of aviation industry. He served as Director of Business, Innovation, and National Secretary at Senacit between 2014 and 2020. Recently, he was named Interim Director of the CTASC AIP, which is the Center for Advanced Technologies in Semiconductors, key tool in the development strategy of the semiconductor sector in Panama. Today, I'm going to start by introducing this topic, this very, very important topic, as I said, the CHIPS Act of the United States, and how this impacts in Panama's future regarding this industry. Creating helpful incentives to produce semiconductors, known as CHIPS and Science Act, became a law in August 2022 to promote the return of microchip manufacturing back into the United States after several decades that this industry was offshore. Currently, the United States produces 12% of the world's semiconductor supplies. To have an idea, during the 1990s, the United States was the producer of the 40% of this type of supplies. This act, the CHIPS Act, created the International Technology Security and Innovation Fund, known as ITSI Fund, through which the U.S. Department of State provides $100 million per year for 5 years to expand the global semiconductor manufacturing, secure semiconductor supply chain, and develop secure and trustworthy information and communication technologies, networks and services through programs and initiatives with partner countries. Of course, between these partner countries, we have Panama. There is no doubt that Panama has an excellent logistics and service infrastructure to serve the market. 7% of the world's trade passes through the Panama Canal, and there are 3 international airports less than 80 kilometers away from the main economic zone. The Technological University of Panama has been developing this center that I already mentioned, the Center for Advanced Semiconductor Technologies. And in this sense, April 30 of this year, Arizona State University signed with Senacit and the UTP a memorandum of understanding that included the possibility for Panamanian students to be eligible to apply to Arizona State University semiconductor industry-relevant bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees programs, as well as graduate and professional certificates. It is expected that the program trains approximately 500 engineers during the next 5 years, which will be around 100 engineers per year needed for this industry. Having said this, as a short introduction, I would like to turn the call over to Dean Kyle Squires to tell us about his experience from the perspective of Arizona State University, being the principal and most important partner of our country for developing this initiative. So, Dr. Squires, all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. I've got some slides here. I'll share my screen. Let's just take a moment. Hopefully you can see the first slide. Again, appreciate the introduction and the invitation. What I'd like to do is just reinforce all that you just heard, meaning the importance of semiconductor manufacturing innovation, workforce development, and the key word in my remarks, about 15 minutes or so, is partnership. So the CHIPS Act is transformative for our country, but I would claim also transformative for our partners. And Panama is indeed a very important partner, already connections in place. And again, it will come back to people, talent, ideas, and innovation. And how do we think about that, about what we're doing here at ASU, and how we think about enabling our partners as part of really improving the robustness of innovation, ideas, manufacturing, in and around semiconductors and microelectronics. So I'm the Dean of the Fulton Schools of Engineering. Been fortunate to work with a great team on part of the CHIPS Act initiatives, and I'm the founding CEO for the Southwest Advanced Prototyping Hub. I'll talk about that a bit more as we go. Okay, so get this to go. So Semicon West was just mentioned. Indeed, it was held in San Francisco not very long ago. It's coming to Phoenix, and so we're going to look forward to hosting the meeting here. I mentioned partnership. Well, there's Dario Solis in the center of the frame there, one of our really important business development folks, you know, building connections, helping with these student pathways and so forth with, guess what, our Panamanian partners. So we genuinely seek to grow and strengthen this relationship. The CHIPS Act, again, providing a way to do that. So a lot of good things already in motion. And I think that's another important point to make here. You know, the things that are going, we need to strengthen as we continue to grow out all that we do. So what I want to do is briefly introduce you to Arizona State University. So I'm in Tempe, Arizona this morning, talk about our college, set the stage just by describing the semiconductor industry landscape here in Phoenix, how we're attacking the CHIPS Act, then conclude and highlight the Panama ASU strategic relationship, all towards raising awareness and helping you all understand kind of where we are, where we want to go, and you know, look forward to questions and discussion. So Arizona State University is the country's largest public university in the United States. The charter, which is essentially a mission and vision put together, is embodied here, meaning ASU is an access mission dedicated to providing pathways and opportunities for students. Okay, it is a research enterprise where we're trying to drive innovation, do research that matters, and because we're a public university, also do this in ways that serve our community. So that's a very special set of responsibilities. ASU is an innovative place. So we start over here on the left. ASU has been ranked #1 in innovation for now, I think it's 8 years in a row. It really is innovative in the way that we try to attack problems, build partnerships, and accomplish our goals. Some of the ways in which I can, again, introduce you further to ASU, our college, okay, we're the Fulton Schools of Engineering. I have a slide coming up next that will show you our structure. We're over 32,000 students now. So a College of Engineering and Technology, 32,000 students, that's the largest in the country. That's an embodiment of an access mission, okay? Arizona State University is graduating nearly 8,000 STEM graduates per year, most of which are coming from our college. So engineers, technologists, computer scientists. Over the past year, this past spring in May, when we had our spring graduation event. We were, I think, around 4,400 graduates. So this is a very large number of talent that we're putting into the community, into the state, and the country. We're very innovative among the faculty, very adept at thinking about how they translate their discoveries to practice. And we care deeply about what our partners think of us. Okay, so we're well ranked in terms of U.S. universities providing talent to the tech landscape. And we want to continue to do that. We think that's very important. So one slide, just one slide on our college. So we're the Fulton Schools of Engineering. We're comprised, as was mentioned a moment ago, of 8 schools. And those schools are shown here. If you look at the white letters connected to those schools, those are the degree programs that live within those schools. So for example, if we look at our School of Electrical, Computer, and Energy Engineering, that's a school with around 80 faculty, around 3,000 students, offering the degrees of electrical engineering, computer engineering, which is in partnership with our computer science school, and then also in robotics and autonomous systems. And we can keep going. Our School of Sustainable Engineering in the Built Environment is focusing on civil engineering, construction, environmental engineering, and sustainable engineering, and so on and so on. Altogether, there's 25 undergraduate programs. There's over 50 graduate programs. We're now on actually 3 campuses. We're online. We have an array of partnerships within ASU, but increasingly we have a very important array of partners externally. Okay, one of which is in London, where we are partners on operating a College of Engineering with King's College London and University of New South Wales. But we recognize and embrace the opportunities for international engagement. Engineering and technology is, by definition today, a global profession. Very forward-looking companies, our faculty, our students want to have those connections around the world to solve, really the most pressing problems that invariably bring teams together from all parts of the planet. So that's what we look like as a college in one slide. To pivot, okay, this is about semiconductors and what's in store. Phoenix is interesting. The genesis of the technology landscape in Phoenix is through, guess what, semiconductors. In the late 40s and 50s, Motorola was essentially the first, I'll say, significant engineering enterprise within Phoenix. Opened the first lab, began to grow further, Motorola into Intel, and further and further as we move through the 2000s, to where we are today. A very dynamic ecosystem, starting with Motorola through Intel, now TSMC, but a range of important suppliers and other companies within the valley. This is one depiction of that. This is a map of Phoenix. I'm speaking to you today from basically right here. It's identified as number 6 on the map. That corresponds to the location of Benchmark Electronics. We're just down the street. If you move to the north, okay, item number 2, that's TSMC. They're actually slightly outside this range on the slide. Okay, so they're around an hour from my office. If we go south, and you can see the number 1 on the slide, slightly again south, that's where Intel has their fabs, around a half an hour from my office. So end to end, you can travel about 90 minutes. You can go from Intel to TSMC, but you can also come across many very important semiconductor companies, suppliers, microelectronics manufacturers, and so forth in and around Phoenix. We really do feel strongly that Phoenix is what we call ground zero for semiconductors. We want it to be the most important place in the United States. We think that it is for semiconductor innovation and manufacturing. We want it to be globally connected. And that is important, again, through partnerships with Panama and many other places around the world. So again, another version of the map, just showing once more, I'm speaking to you, you can see Tempe on that slide. Around 8 miles south is our research park. And at our research park, we have a fab. This was originally built by Motorola in the 80s. We now own and operate it. It has faculty laboratories in there. It has companies renting space. It has startups. And it's also the headquarters for our CHIPS Act effort in support of the DoD Microelectronics Commons. And again, you also see TSMC, building really significantly to the north and Intel to the south. So, given that introduction to ASU, where we sit in this very unique landscape with respect to semiconductor innovation. So, what is different about ASU, right? What is our differentiation? How would we begin to exploit that? Well, I just mentioned the research park where we have a fab. You'll hear the acronym MTW, which means Macro Technology Works. Former Motorola fab allows state-of-the-art prototyping at 200 and 300 millimeter scales, which is industry relevant. A very large array of corporate partners. Our fab, our capabilities, our partnerships, coupled with the largest engineering school in the country and investments from the state that have allowed us to experiment, build, and be ready for what the CHIPS Act is bringing and begin to exploit that in really important ways. That's been significant. So that's ASU, and it's put us in this position to build these consortia because when it comes to semiconductor manufacturing, workforce development, research, these are necessarily partnership models if we're going to make a difference in how we approach and address these problems. So within the US, you also heard it mentioned just a moment ago, the CHIPS Act has been this transformative moment. And the vision, the pillars, if you will, and this is a slide actually from the Department of Commerce, is to achieve leadership in technology, right? Not just bring manufacturing within the borders of the US, but also bring the innovation, the talent, the ideas, and do this in a way that we have robust supply chains, robust partnerships around the world. Create new ways to bring ideas to market. And you heard it also alluded to, this is a very important starting point. It's also very important to the ASU Panama partnership, is build talent. A new generation of engineers and technologists will be the way that the investments of the CHIPS Act, whether in Panama or in the US, are sustained. So it's very important to us. So what does it look like when we think of the semiconductor and packaging supply chain within the Valley? You can really begin to break that out in terms of packaging, substrates, metrology and measurement. It's a very diverse mix of companies. And these companies have been very importantly informed our curriculum. They're important to, crafting winning proposals, and it gives you just a sense of what we look like, here in the Valley, in Phoenix. So I mentioned the SWAP Hub, and briefly, what is it? So it's the Southwest Advanced Prototyping Hub. It's one of 8 hubs awarded by the Department of Defense as part of the Microelectronics Commons that's within the CHIPS Act. So the CHIPS Act funded the Commons. We competed. We're one of the 8 hubs selected. And basically what it is about is the following. It's a place for prototyping. It's a place for achieving scale, exploring flexibility, and lowering the barriers to access, whether those be faculty, researchers, small business, other inventors who can experiment, prototype, and basically, in this case, develop and contribute to the kinds of systems needed by the Defense Department. So the customers, if you will, for the SWAP Hub are the Boeings, the Honeywells, the Lockheed Martins, the Raytheons. And we're working with a very strong team of other universities within the state of Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, an array of really impressive companies to build the interdisciplinary teams needed to focus on the problems that allow us to develop the new systems necessary, again, to support the DoD mission. Okay, but if you really want to boil it down, it's again about enabling prototyping. We're very happy to have won this. It's within the first year. It's off to a terrific start, and we are really leaning into this to make sure that it's as successful as possible and can continue to grow. So let's also think about partnership, and this is, of course, of significant interest to ASU in Panama through the ITSE funds. ITSE is another component of the CHIPS Act that enables our partners around the world to also participate. Okay, and this is very important, within the Americas, within Panama, within other places, where at ASU, we have built long-standing partnerships, having connected into countries around the world that put us in a position to win, in this case, about $14 million of funding in support of building out these arrangements with Panama, with other countries. This is President Crow, and this is Assistant Secretary of State Tului in Washington, D.C. when the award was announced. And we want to strengthen supply chains. We want to build the kinds of workforce to create the technical skills that allow us, again, to advance innovation, ideas, talent, and robustness in supply chain and elsewhere. So what are the objectives? Okay, well, we want to strengthen collaboration between ASU and Panama. We want to do that in ways that improve both of us. That is, we have shared vision and goals. We win together in terms of new workforce, new ideas, new innovation. And that means the immediate needs, okay, it might be around packaging, it might be around other areas. But alignment on educational opportunities is important, right? It was also mentioned, right, the 500 students, about 100 per year. Those are the ways in which we have the sustaining mechanism, if you will, to make sure that future workforce has the talent needed, informed by industry, so that, again, companies, whether they're in Phoenix, whether they're in Panama, whatever the case may be, can confidently work across those borders in ways that really advance the state of semiconductor innovation and manufacturing. So almost through it, just a couple of other things. As also mentioned, the decree that was signed on the 30th of April, we're very proud of that. We're very happy to be part of that. It formalized the collaboration. This new bachelor's, master's, and PhD and certificates, the scholarship program, because again, it's about talent ultimately that will be the way that we sustain this. You know, working with the new UTP Center for Advanced Tech and Semiconductors, and that decree, again, formalizing that relationship, you know, really putting pen to paper and setting in motion, you know, all the other good things to come around this. So just a couple more as I wrap up. You know, this is an expensive plan. You're talking about workforce, you're talking about students at all levels. You're identifying, we are identifying with you the key areas of research in supply chain, in packaging, building out the training mechanism, the academic programs, the professional development. The key message here on the slide, this partnership is comprehensive. It's not simply about a couple of students or a faculty, excuse me, faculty collaboration. It's much more extensive. And we are vested in making sure this is as successful as possible. So just to give you one sense, and there's a website here that you can go seek in additional information. There are many programs at ASU available excuse me, for our Panamanian students. This is just one slide of many, whether it be in engineering, chemistry, computer science, manufacturing, the array of disciplines and majors that are important to equip students, both at ASU and again with our Panamanian colleagues, to put these industry in position to be successful is very broad, and we're committed to making that successful. So that was a really rapid overview about ASU, about where we are as the Fulton Schools, how we think about microelectronics within Phoenix and these important partnerships. Gives you a sense of things. We're very proud and very excited about the partnership we have with our Panamanian colleagues. We look to continue to grow it, but I really, you know, again, want to thank, you know, the organizers for having an opportunity to provide that introduction. With that, I will stop sharing the screen so we can end this back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Squires. It's very, very interesting, everything you've shared. Definitely, it inspires to study these kinds of engineer careers. It's very, very interesting. So now we have the Panamanian counterpart of all this spectacular project that's coming up for the semiconductor industry. We have Dr. Victor Sanchez, Urrutia, so please go ahead. Wait, you are mute. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Anshan, I want to thank Anshan for the invitation and Dean Squires to participate in this. Actually, much of what I was going to say, we already sort of talked around, but I'm going to be more specific and maybe give you more of the view of the Panamanian side. Let me share my presentation. Okay. Okay. Actually, as Nicole mentioned, I've been tasked of creating this Center for Advanced Semiconductor Technologies, but I want to talk today a little bit more about the strategy itself, and then at the end, just give you briefly an idea of how this center will look like. Um, I don't have to repeat, but the global semiconductor market is enormous and is expected to grow to $1 trillion by the end of this decade. And we understand that it's going to continue growing. AI, well, semiconductors are everywhere, are all the consumer electronics, automotive, uh, instruments, instrumentation, etc. So that is something that is expected, and we know that that is coming. But we also know that the semiconductor global value chain is very much concentrated in Asia, and the pandemic, the COVID, show us that that supply chain was brittle because when uh, when when movement of goods was was impeded by the disruption caused by the epidemic, by the COVID pandemic, then suddenly things like you would not think about semiconductors like automotive production were affected. So the idea of the CHIPS Act is to bring this value chain closer to the U.S., or at least make it less dependent and on the Asian side of the world. Um, what is the semiconductor supply chain? Well, this is a very complex industry, has many companies that work in different spaces and different ways. But we can perhaps talk about design and then the fabrication we call the front end, which is very intense, capital intensive industry, and that is the foundries that the dean mentioned, TMC and Intel in Arizona. And then there is the back end, which is the assembly, packaging, and testing, which is very much tied to the logistic infrastructure, okay, or the logistic platform. So as a Panamanian, as a country, we think we can play a role in the assembly, packaging, and testing part of the back end because that ties to our logistic platform right away. And design by its nature also maybe something we can also work on. Again, this is a very large industry, includes materials, equipments, and so there's opportunities all over, but we think that the back end is for Panama makes a lot more sense. And it's also the part that the CHIPS Act somehow envisions for the countries that are part of the IPSI fund. And as you mentioned, we're already part of the CHIPS Act. That was something that was an achievement by our ambassador in Washington that actually did the lobbying and the work for us to be included. Well, only 3 countries in Latin America were included: Mexico, Costa Rica, and Panama. And both Mexico and Costa Rica already have parts of the industry. We are the only ones that probably have very little, if any. And it's interesting that we were included, and it's part of the work that Panama has done to be here. Also, how is the government preparing? How are we facing this challenge? Um, well, we've been working on this for more than a year. We are listening to the industry. We hosted the SIA meeting here, group on Panama. We just came back from Semicon West. We visited Costa Rica to talk with our fellow universities, but also to talk with industries settled there. So we are, as a group, we're talking about with the role play with the players in the industry. We went to ASU very important and a very important partner. And as I will say, as already the dean mentioned, we have already programs, and I will show you later. We already have even the scholarship programs announced. We are working as a group. For example, we are working many institutions like the UTP, but ITSE, and other universities, INADE, government institutions like the Ministry of Foreign Relations, MISI, Pro Panama. We are all working together, and Senacit, which is the main funding agency for this initiative. So, for example, we went to Semicon. We just arrived this morning, and we were, the president of the university was there, the head of Senacit was there, the new vice minister of MISI was there. So we had a very comprehensive, and people from the Chamber of Commerce and Panama Pacifico. So very interesting group. So we're working on legislation. We're still halfway there. We're trying to build strong alliances. ASU is our main partners in this, and in general, doing what we do, which is strengthening global ties. So, as it's already been mentioned, there finally was a government decree signed in April, with the purpose of promoting and giving you the first view of how this Panamanian strategy would look like. Again, it's interesting, and one of the strengths of Panama is that we just changed governments and everything continues as it was planned. Vice Minister Hoyos had to go 7 days after taking the role as vice minister to present Panama in the conference, and we haven't stopped. We haven't lost a step in the transition. We of course were working with the new government before they took over. So, what are the objectives of the Panamanian strategy? And let me just say that what this decree does is tells you several things. Mentions that we need a more defined strategy. I mean, the decree gives you an idea of where we're gonna go, but there are things that we cannot say in a presidential decree. For example, anything that has to do with tax exemptions, fiscal benefits have to be approved by the National Assembly by means of a law. So the decree gives the idea of how we want to work. It provides governance, coordinating entities that will help to discuss and make sure that all the stakeholders are in the same page when it comes to the strategy. It also mentions that we need to create a more detailed strategy with action plans, and those have to be created in a law because probably it will also include some kind of extra benefits. And the importance of human talent capacity creation was very much part of that decree, and that's where the center was created. So, for example, the decree talks about a commission for innovation in microelectronics. This is just a consulting and coordinating group, and we are already starting to set it up. We had to delay that because, of course, we were changing governments, and several key members of this group are from government agencies, and is led by MISI, Minister of Commerce. So, what are the objectives in general? As I say, we don't have the detailed strategy, but it's not surprising what that strategy is going to say, or what are the main objectives of the strategy. Of course, we want to attract part of the value chain to Panama, okay? And we want to work as a region. We understand Panama and Costa Rica together are smaller than the dollar worth area, for example, in Texas. We are very small countries, and we have to begin thinking and working as a region. There's always the competition that's to be expected, but one of the things that we had, well, our vice minister had the opportunity to speak with the vice minister in Costa Rica, and we need to create probably a regional strategy also besides this Panamanian strategy. But of course, we want to track part of that value chain. And as I say, of course, Panama, the main asset that it has is their logistic platform. It's not only the maritime or shipping part that is constituted by the Panama Canal, but also the great air connectivity that Panama has. Ships and most of the finished products move by air, but a lot of the raw materials come by ship. So that could be interesting. The second part, and this is what we are working very much with ASU, is the workforce development with world-class standards. And that's why ASU is such an important partner in this. This type of industry requires there's first of all in general a lack of workforce all in the world for this industry because it's growing so fast. And the standards have to be very high. We want to create a labor force that can compete internationally. Because we can even envision that while we get attract industries, we may have people working outside the country. Okay, so this is something, and the agreement with ASU is critical. And another thing that is important in this type of strategy is the promotion of local innovation and local supply chains. Okay, it's just not only good enough to bring companies, we have to make sure these companies are tied into the local ecosystem. Okay, and that is, which is probably different in the way we have done strategies in the past. And this is because of the nature of the industry. It's a knowledge intensive industry. And so that's why we created the center. So the idea in general is to create this ecosystem. We think the opportunities, as I said, we're in assembly and testing, supply chain. We already are kind of a distribution center of Intel, but in an ad hoc way. Design and PCB printed circuit boards are another area we may want to try to attract. And then all this extra part of the strategy has to do with workforce development, knowledge acquisition, and stuff. We have the Senacit is funding the creation of this lab at the UTP, at the Technological University. We have Senacit is managing an IDB loan that is also very much related to incubation and technology transfer and in general innovation support. And we have already spoken about our relation with ASU to provide the workforce development. So what have we done so far? We have already contracted, the government has contracted studies by the IDB, by Breakwater Strategy. We are looking forward to other studies and market studies, more defined, more detailed market studies. We were talking with some companies in Semiconductor for that. We created a task force created by many individuals that were part and participated in the creation of this strategy, of this previous pre-strategy, and been working hard creating linkages. We had a special mission to ASU before the signing of the decree to see the ASU environment, a legal framework. We already talked about the presidential decree. We still need to go through the assembly for more detailed things. And the CTASC, this center, was created in June 17. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. We're still waiting for the OCDE analysis. It's which is requested by the State Department. This OCD analysis is probably due out in August, at least the first draft. And that is important because the ITSI funds that we will talk about is $500 million in 5 years. The way we can access those funds will depend very much as we understand what are the results of this OCDE studies analysis. I already mentioned, and Dean mentioned that we went to Semicon West, the delegation. So we are moving, and there is a Semicon Taiwan in September, if I'm not mistaken, and we are making sure that we have a delegation there because actually we need to attract mostly companies that are in Asia right now. So there is that we're working on that as we speak. These educational training activities are already underway. I mean, the scholarship announcements have already been done. These are scholarship for studying in Arizona and ASU, and it includes masters, PhDs, professional development programs, especially when we know exactly what companies are arriving. This is a well, I'll explain that later. And then undergraduate dual programs. So we have 2+2, 3+1 between ASU and UTP. Okay, and those are already in motion. But still some months to go before we start, but we already announced the scholarships. Senate already announced scholarships. Senate also announced mobility funds to move students from Panama to do internship in companies in Costa Rica, in the U.S., in Arizona. So we are already doing that. And as it was also mentioned, the strategy also includes the creation of a Semiconductor Advanced Technology Center, a CTASC, Centro de Tecnología Avanzada para Semiconductores. That's what this and it's an AIP. For those who do not know, AIP stands for Asociación de Interés Público, Public Interest Association. It's an entity created by Senate about 20 years ago by means of a presidential decree, and it was formalized in law in 2018. It's a type of institution that provides a public-private way of managing. It's an institution that we use in Senate and the UTP for the creation of research labs. The idea is to solve some of the problems that the government structure imposes on research labs. So these type of institutions can work with private entities in very, very efficient ways. Okay, so we work as if we were a private company when we are dealing with private funds, but we also receive government funds, which we work with a government type of structure. So that ensures transparency, ensures but ensures also agility, which is something that the government has problems. And not those other things, little things like gets you out of the even the government money gets out of the budget. So the end of the year doesn't mean the end of the budget. So you have little things that people who have no work in the government don't understand how makes government work so complicated. The other thing it does, it allows the employees of the AIP are subject to the civil labor laws, not the government labor laws. Meaning, I can hire foreigners, I can hire with better salaries if we need to bring people who are better. So it was created already in June 17. It doesn't start from nothing. What we are doing is putting people we already had in the country and somehow putting them together in this center so we can begin to direct their attention, their energies to the semiconductor industry. There is a commitment between the Senate and OTP of more than $30 million in the next few years, and possibly even more. And I want to stress this is all money put up by the government, by the Panamanian society as an investment, as a risk investment. So we are not waiting for ITSI funds, although we were happy to accept them if they come. We are not waiting for US funds. We are actually investing more than $50 million in training and the creation of the lab and other things. Briefly, for those who do not know us, the Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá is like Arizona State, a public university who was created with the idea of helping transform the country. And we have played that role. It has a long story. It's founded in 1981, but actually it started as part of the University of Panama, and that was extracted from the University of Panama in 1981. And the central idea when it was created was because we were afraid that we wouldn't have enough engineers for the Panama Canal. Okay? And now nobody is afraid of not having engineers from the Panama Canal. So obviously we did a job, but we have our alumni are central in the power generation industry, in telecommunications. As Nicole mentioned, I helped create an aviation school to work with COPA. Construction, those big tall buildings in Panama often are designed by our professors, and so on. We have 25,000 students who are all STEMs careers, and we work with schools of faculties of civil, electrical, mechanical, computer science, industrial, and we offer associate degrees up to PhD degrees. We are, and this is a long story, but we're transforming, and this is a generational thing, transforming the university to more of a research-based university. So why is it important to create a center for research and development and innovation for this type of strategy? I like to say this because some people, we normally don't do that in Panama when we are trying to attract investment. Okay, we are very generous in our laws for capital inflows and outflows, for migration, for financial benefits, but we normally don't concentrate too much in workforce development. And this is something we want to change. The question that comes up is, well, what are you going to train for if we don't have the companies yet? That's a very good question. And the thing is that we have to be creating to train the trainers. We have to be ready to respond quickly if an opportunity shows up. And at this moment, you will see a lot of high-level people, engineers, masters, PhDs. Those are the ones who take a longer time to prepare. And in a certain way, they are most flexible also. If a company decides to settle in Panama, then we activate other mechanisms to create, short-term technical retrain engineers are already in the field for quickly solving that. So we have a year lead time normally before a company decides to actually open doors. They have to create infrastructure and all that. And we have plans then to work with the companies to provide the training. Either we do it locally, which mostly is going to be the case, or we're going to partner again with our partners, international partners, to do that. So it also gives credibility to the Panama strategy. So we're just not talking, we're actually doing the work. We are investing. We think it's a good investment anyway, even if companies don't arrive. We think there's a lot of opportunities for us there. We provide an infrastructure for prototyping and development of service for local companies. Not the sophisticated prototyping that ASU is doing there, but something that we can work here. And we want to generate entrepreneurship and incubation in this sector. And we also serve as a liaison to other research labs all over the world. I'm gonna be very quick about this. We are not talking about foundries. We're talking about design and applications, engineering application, and assembly and testing, mostly. And as I say, the center will amalgamate people already exist. So we have a very strong materials lab in the UTP. Okay, physics materials lab. Well, make sure that these people are together. They visit companies in the semiconductor industry and stuff. So their research and their know-how is transferred more to that kind of. We supply chains is important. Of course, that's the main, probably the main factor we can bring. To the value chain, design labs. We already have people prepared on this, but now we have them together, and so on. Eventually, we'll also have to build pilot plants and manufacturing lab, especially as we know what companies will be arriving. And we were going to work with the whole ecosystem, educational ecosystem in Panama, and we already have important agreements and working relations, mainly with ASU, but also with the North Texas Semiconductor Institute and related industries, CITC Netherlands, etc. So this is what I want to tell you about the Panamanian experience or ideas in this field.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanchez. Definitely, it's an honor for us to have all this information from you two. I think there's no way, in regular, in common life, to talk to you and to have access to the information that you're handling about this topic. So now we're going, I don't know if Dr. Dean Squires wants to add something additional at this time, or we just proceed with the questions.
No, I would just, congratulate you all on what's happening. That's exciting. I thought the overview was extremely helpful. I mean, I feel like I know a lot of what's going on in Panama, and every time we have an engagement, I learn something new. So I'm very impressed.
Yes, I am impressed too, and I'm here. So I have to go visit Dr. Sanchez over there at Universidad Tecnológica. So I'm going to read a few questions that we have in our chat from Paula. I will encourage other members to send their questions as well about this and this chance we have to ask these two experts. So, Mr. Squires, what are the key technological advances in the semiconductor industry that Panama should focus on to stay competitive?
A great question. I'll amplify some of the points that were made in Victor's presentation. We heard a lot about assembly, test, and packaging, right? That's an area where it seems to be a focus and priority in Panama. I can tell you this: it's certainly a focus for us. And here again, if we think about where we have aligned interests, and if I just use packaging as kind of a general category, okay, because it brings in so many different notions. We're competing for some of the packaging opportunities within the CHIPS Act, within the U.S. that are being offered now. It makes sense for that to be a potential focus for Panama, but I don't want to make too much of it. Just that it stuck out to me in the presentation as something that you're thinking about, I think, in a very clever way, as are we. And I think that will be an area that will no doubt find ways to collaborate. It's just one good example, I would claim.
Okay, great. So definitely, I understand that there is a mix of, logistics and geographical position of Panama and infrastructure and, everything combined. So the other question says, it's for Mr. Sanchez, what role do you see Panama playing in the innovation and development of new semiconductor technologies? What measures are being taken to ensure that the development of the industry benefits the local communities and promotes social responsibility? You're mute. I'm sorry, you're mute. Okay.
I do this every day, and sometimes some days I'm really bad at this. Okay, that's a very good question and interesting, not so easy to answer question. We were during our trip, we were talking a lot with the president of the university and the secretary of Senate about exactly how the center will work in this situation. What I would expect, there's two ideas here. One, how do this make sure this center helps the local economy also? Okay, oftentimes we do strategies for attraction of businesses that create enclaves. You know, places like, well, you're there in Panama Pacific, you don't even know what is in Panama Pacific. They normally do not interact with the rest of the country that much. There's reasons for that, and we can go around talking about it. So, but the idea with the CTAS is to create also not only help prepare and provide experience for a workforce that can work for companies that come to settle in Panama, but also to start creating local companies that can be providers in case that those arrive, or that somehow serve the local community. So the CITA strategy has at the beginning, especially at the beginning, while we don't have companies arriving to Panama, is going to be very much focused into that. That will mean that we will begin talking with local companies to see if we can begin working with. There's an application area. I don't know if you saw the structure of the institute. We have the main semiconductors, but then there is an application in which you use semiconductors, either FPGAs, programmable chips, or ASICs to solve specific problems, and also in general electronics, and we will begin in testing mechanisms to work with local industries and local companies to provide solutions for them, hopefully solutions that then can be sold somewhere else. Okay. And for that, we are preparing, and we are not ready to say anything about this, with grants, innovation grants with Senate to help that kind of work.
Okay, excellent. So Mr. Sanchez explained a bit more about the presidential decree that was signed by the prior president. Now we have a new president. But in that sense, I understand that now there is the next step is to go to the National Assembly and explain these matters to the deputy, to the ones that are in charge of preparing the laws. So in that sense, Mr. Squires, what will be your advice on the regulatory framework needed to make the country more attractive for this type of industry? Because besides having like I guess there's like a process of explaining and teaching about this matter, and then you can approach, a new legal regulatory framework. What's the experience in the U.S. about this?
That's a great question. It brings, maybe a couple of ideas or thoughts, if you will. So first, I think when we're thinking, at some point we have to engage the policymakers, right? The legislators. They're ultimately the ones establishing those regulatory frameworks or adapting them. And the first opportunity is to help them also advocate for the same vision. So as an example, a lot of what we're talking about here, whether it's workforce or initiatives, it could be in areas like packaging or whatever the case might be. Essentially what we're talking about is we're building capability. The human capital capability, the expertise to move the industry forward. That's a lifetime of really positive outcomes for the country, for a region. It's building capabilities and lowering barriers to whatever might be slowing that, whatever might be blocking it in some sense. But we need to provide access for the communities to capabilities. It could be an actual laboratory. Okay, so there could be regulatory frameworks around, private sector access to university facilities. I don't know if that's the case, or I don't know in what sense that's relevant, but those are the kinds of things that if we want to stimulate innovation, we need to, and we use this phrase deliberately, democratize access, make it as open and accessible as possible, because that's how the good ideas are going to flow. the policymakers can come in very thoughtfully with designing regulations that promote that, right? That would be, kind of a starting point. If they're excited about that vision, then it's getting to the kind of what I call the second level of detail. Well, what does that mean exactly? How do we begin to think about that? But really it starts with, do we have the shared vision? Are we aligned with democratizing access, increasing opportunities and capabilities? From there, a lot of good things will happen.
I would like to add there that
Please. Yes.
we are in close conversations with the National Assembly about this. But let me explain a little bit about the decree yet. The decree asks for several things to be done, and we haven't completed all the things that need to be done. We need to create these entities, these governance entities. Again, as I explained, since the government was changing, it was hard to do that in this moment, okay? So we are a little bit behind of the times that we mentioned. And it would just make sense. We could not ask for a government that was going out
Right.
30 days before and ask for them to send representatives. It made no sense. So we are doing that, but we are working very close with MISI, and they are already setting all the letters and making sure we get all this governance bodies in place. These governance bodies have to discuss a more detailed strategy, okay? That has more actions and maybe actionable things that maybe have to go to a law, a specific law. Any improvement, any regulatory framework, any financial or tax frameworks have to go through a law, and those have to be created now. I want to also mention that part of the ITSI funds that the ASU won includes a consulting on regulatory frameworks, as far as I know, Dr. Squires. It's a part of it. Maybe I think it's going to be done by Boston Consulting. I'm not sure. Dario knows that better. And that is, so there's going to be part of also a review of our regulatory frameworks, IP frameworks, and things like that. And it's part of what the State Department also wants from the ITSI fund. So that's going to come. We have, as I say, this project is a state level project. I mean, there is no constituency I know in Panama that is not interested in this. So I hope that's not going to be an issue. I mean, we just have to take the time to do a good job of creating to have the proper legislation in place.
Yes, I'm sure that will happen. Of course, if you have the support of the government, of the central government, the assembly then will understand the need for all these special laws at the time they are required. So, well, I want to thank you both again for being with us. This is being recorded. It will be in AmCham's YouTube channel, so you can share with other members of the chamber. Again, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Paula Alzate, who is joining us today. She's the chair of the committee. And we remain always at your disposal here in Panama, Dr. Squires, and hope to see you both soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.